The morning the courtroom doors swung open felt like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air grows too heavy to breathe and every sound seems sharpened with judgment. He stood alone at the defense table, a single father with tired eyes and a jacket that no longer fit quite right, carrying the quiet weight of years spent choosing groceries over new clothes and bedtime stories over sleep. Across the room sat his ex-wife, polished and confident, surrounded by whispers that curled through the benches like smoke. The judge had not yet arrived, but humiliation already pressed down on him, thick and merciless, and he could feel it in the way people looked at him, as if he were already guilty of failing his child and his life. Before the story truly unfolds, pause for just a second. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of love that shows up when the world is harsh, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. He had once imagined courtrooms as places of fairness, where truth stood tall and facts mattered more than appearances. That illusion shattered the moment his ex-wife's lawyer laid out a narrative that painted him as irresponsible, unambitious, and barely capable of holding his life together. The words landed like stones, each one heavier than the last, while he stood there unable to interrupt, knowing that every sentence echoed the worst fears he already carried about himself. He had lost his job during the layoffs, taken night shifts wherever he could, and still walked his daughter to school every morning. None of that fit neatly into the story being told, and he could see the judge's eyes narrowing, not unkindly, but with doubt. The humiliation did not come from lies alone, but from the truth twisted just enough to sting. Yes, his bank account was thin. Yes, his car was old and sometimes unreliable. Yes, his ex-wife now lived in a brighter home, drove a newer vehicle, and spoke with the ease of someone who had found her footing again. What the courtroom did not see were the evenings he spent helping with homework under a flickering lamp, the packed lunches carefully wrapped with handwritten notes, or the way his daughter fell asleep, holding his hand because it was the one constant in her world. Those details were invisible, drowned out by legal language and public perception. When it was his turn to present his side, his voice felt smaller than he remembered. He spoke of schedules and responsibilities, of how he had rearranged his entire life to be present, how fatherhood had become the axis on which everything else turned. He spoke plainly, without flourish, because he had nothing to perform. Only a truth lived quietly day after day. Still, he could feel the imbalance in the room, the subtle tilt toward the person who appeared more put together, more successful, more convincing. The sense of being measured and found lacking settled deep in his chest. As the proceedings dragged on, memories surfaced uninvited. He remembered the early days of his marriage, the promises made over cheap coffee and shared dreams. He remembered the moment he first held his daughter, how the world had narrowed to her tiny breath against his skin. He remembered the night his wife left, saying she needed more than he could give, that love alone was not enough. He had believed her then, and part of him still did, standing there as evidence of a life that had not turned out as planned. The judge announced a short recess, and people rose from their seats in a low murmur. That was when he noticed his mother sitting quietly in the back row. She had arrived unnoticed, her hair now silver, her posture straight despite years of labor that had bent her spine. She had insisted on coming, saying little more than that she wanted to be there for her son. He had not expected anything beyond moral support. She was a woman of few words, someone who believed actions spoke louder, and her presence alone was a comfort he had not realized he needed so badly. During the break, his ex-wife laughed softly with her attorney, her confidence unshaken. He looked down at his hands, calloused and trembling slightly, and wondered how his life had become a public display of shortcomings. He wondered what his daughter would think one day if she knew how close he felt to losing not just a legal battle, but his sense of dignity. He wondered if love could survive being put on trial. When court resumed, something shifted. The judge asked if there were any additional statements or evidence to present. There was a pause, long enough to feel uncomfortable, and then his mother stood. The room seemed to still as she moved forward, each step deliberate, her presence commanding without effort. She did not raise her voice, but there was a gravity to her that pulled attention toward her like a tide. She spoke not in defense, but in truth, laying out a life few in that room knew. She spoke of raising her son alone after his father died young, of working double shifts and sewing clothes late into the night, of teaching him that love was shown through sacrifice and consistency. She spoke of watching him grow into a man who chose responsibility even when it cost him comfort, who stayed when leaving would have been easier. Her words were not emotional pleas, but steady revelations, each one adding dimension to the man the court had reduced to numbers and assumptions. Then she revealed what no one expected. For years she had quietly supported her son and granddaughter, not because he could not manage, but because she wanted to ensure stability during uncertain times. She had set aside money from a small inheritance, using it to help with school supplies, medical bills, and emergencies, never taking credit, never asking for recognition. She explained that the picture of poverty being painted was incomplete, that while they lived modestly, they lived securely, anchored by a family that took care of its own. More than that, she presented records of her own involvement in the child's life, detailing routines, doctor visits, school meetings, and the consistent environment her granddaughter thrived in. The narrative shifted from a struggling single father barely holding on to a family, supported by generations of quiet strength. The courtroom listened, not out of pity, but out of respect, as the truth expanded beyond surface impressions. The judge asked questions, measured and thoughtful, and with each answer, the tension eased. The ex-wife's confident posture faltered, not because she was villainous, but because the story she had leaned on no longer stood alone. It was not about wealth or appearances anymore, but about presence, commitment, and the unseen labor of love that sustains a child. As the proceedings concluded, the ruling reflected that change. Custody arrangements acknowledged the stability and care provided, recognizing the father's role not as a fallback, but as a cornerstone. It was not a dramatic victory filled with celebration, but a quiet affirmation that truth, when fully seen, carries its own power. Outside the courtroom, the light felt different, softer somehow. The father stood with his mother, gratitude swelling in his chest too big for words. He realized that humiliation had been the fire that forged clarity, that being stripped down to his essence had revealed something unbreakable. His daughter would grow up knowing that love does not always look impressive, but it endures. Life did not suddenly become easy. Bills still arrived, schedules remained tight, and exhaustion lingered. But there was a renewed sense of dignity in the way he walked through his days. He no longer measured himself by other standards, but by the quiet victories of being present, reliable, and loving. His mother returned to her simple home, content in having done what she always had, standing up when it mattered most. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who fought quietly or stood strong when it would have been easier to step back, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive, reaching others who need to hear that they are not alone. Before the ending, there is one small but meaningful request. Please comment below with a word or phrase that represents strength to you. Your words may become encouragement for someone scrolling through in a moment of doubt. In the end, the courtroom became more than a place of judgment. It became a reminder that behind every case file is a human story layered with sacrifice, resilience, and love. The single father returned home that evening, cooked a simple dinner, and tucked his daughter into bed, her laughter filling the small apartment with a warmth no verdict could grant or take away. And as the lights dimmed, there was peace in knowing that even when the world misunderstands, truth has a way of standing up, often through the quiet courage of those who raised us.